Not that if you have anything to turn in, put it up here in terms of whether have to speak corrections or have to speak questions, maybe for the HAP exam, which is coming up on Wednesday of next week. Today.
Whoa.
Anybody else not get their quiz? I've got Anastasia, Karen, Corey, Stacy Flash, Ben. Okay, your quizzes.
I guess.
We have a lot to continue talking about, and you have a lot of resources to go through. We have several chapter outlines where we're just getting some fantastic outlines in that are so detailed that I wish we had about 4 more weeks to spend more time with the outlines, but please don't forget that they're there.
Well, we only have a week and a half.
I know, and we have a test in a week from today, so I'm trying to hit high points, but I really greatly appreciate all the outlines people are making. And if you're really into just really learning, I would suggest reading through those with a highlighter. What I'm going to have to say, I'm probably not going to ask you all of it by any means. So, which brings me to the situation of the objectives that I gave you, that I'd given another class. Do you have those? So it looks like this. Why don't you take a pen or something and kind of duplicate what I have done. And this is I did this pretty quickly. The overall general expectations of what you should know for your studying for your exam on Wednesday of next week. definitely these objectives are good to kind of plan your study around. Nutrition and digestive system, yes. I just went ahead and put some answers there, so you don't have to write those down because those are pretty easy answers. I did go ahead and scratch out 13 up here. Number 14 with digestive system. If you look at a label on a box or a package, and it says how many carbs, how many calories, how many protein, and so forth, you probably learned this in semester 1. But 1 kilocalorie, which is what they see, of protein is equal to 4 calories. And carbohydrate is the same, is equal to 4 calories. But lipids, which think of those as fats and oils and stuff, those have more than twice as much as a carb or a protein. So 9, there are actually 9 calories in a lipid per gram. And whereas there are 4. So if they tell you something has 3 carbs, they're probably going to tell you how many calories. It has 4 calories, or it has 12 calories from a carb. If it tells you it has 3 grams of carb, you would multiply 3 times 4 for each one, so it would have 12 total carbs. And so a lot of this we've already gone over. Distinguish between probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics are the bacteria, the flora in the intestinal tract, and that you add new ones by taking capsules or pills that have actually millions, if not billions, of bacteria per capsule, that you try to regrow your microbial flora and try to squeeze out some of the nasty stuff that you don't want to grow there, like the yeasty beasties. All right. Also, prebiotics are food sources for the probiotics to encourage their growth. So that's the difference between prebiotics and probiotics. What's in feces? It's made of, it has a lot of bacteria in it, but the primary digestive result of fecal matter is indigestible material that we can't break down, like cellulose, so we can't break down, which adds fiber. I know lab people who sounds familiar, echoes right now. But, and so fiber is good because it keeps the bowels moving. And that's why we need to really increase our fiber content to help prevent colon cancer. Because the longer it sits there, the worse it is for you. And so fiber adds. We're skipping skeletal system. And we're skipping muscular system. You don't need to know any muscles, except for 2 and 7. One of the things on the agenda for today is to talk about muscle contraction and how that works at the molecular level. The circulatory system, I just scratched number 1 out. Okay, so if you do the same, I'd like to make this straight, it would be easier to see. So if you want to just duplicate that on the sheets. So we've got 2 systems, plus the integumentary system. All you need to know is the integumentary system is the outer skin and body coverings like hair, nails. So we're not going into detail about that one either. Circulatory system we spent a lot of time on, and the digestive system a fair amount of time. So I would say there will be quite a bit on the circulatory system. Like number 20 over here for circulatory, teach someone how to take BP. Not in this course, we didn't do that. You really should know some common risk factors for cardiovascular disease, but I just scratched it out because we didn't have time to go into a lot of the health aspects. Identify the more common symptoms of heart attack in males and females. I scratched that one out because we can go into detail about that, how to differentiate. Let me just say this, the female heart attacks do not always, in fact, not real frequently, mimic the symptoms of a male heart attack. A male heart attack usually is squeezing of the chest, you know, the left arm pain. Female symptoms can also be back pain. It can be jaw pain, ear pain, it can be, plus feeling lousy, feeling really terrible and exhausted and so forth. So please be aware of that for your own good health preservation. Respiratory system on page 3. I scratched out some things. The Heimlich maneuver, I hope you do know from your golf classes or whatever how to do that, but I'm not going to ask you about it. I did not go into all of the actual diseases of the respiratory system. I'm concentrating on anatomy. So I scratched that out. Anything to do with the lungs is pulmonary. The membrane around the lungs is plural. I didn't go into tidal volume and residual volume in number 8, so I scratched it out. Okay, any questions on respiratory system? Yes.
What did you say the membrane was called?
Plural, P-L-E-U-R-A-L. People who get an inflammation in the pleural membrane is called pleurisy, and that hurts every time you breathe. So it's not a good thing to have. Excretory, urinary system. Number 6, be sure that you know that the adjective renal is associated with the kidneys. The renal arteries, the renal veins go to the kidneys. The main excretory product in number 8 for us is urine. I'm not asking you to know the excretory products of other animals right now. And what is in urine would be nitrogenous waste, extra nitrogen, water, urine. It could be all kinds of stuff coming out that the body needs to get rid of.
What causes pleurisy?
You know, I'm not sure if they know exactly. In some cases, it's one thing. In other cases, it's different. It could be the settling in the chest cavity of some bacteria or something of that sort that then starts growing and multiplying, and then you have an infection, basically.
Yeah, because I know infection is usually associated with like bacteria.
Right, but inflammation, it could also be maybe an injury to the chest cavity that is having the pleural membrane irritated. That could be a possibility too. Yeah, you don't need to know the ranking of the kidney disease for death, but it's significant. And number 10, for kidney failure, the main hope is dialysis to prolong life somewhat longer. And dialysis is an artificial way of cleaning your blood. So dialysis is number 10. The 8 golden rules for healthy kidney, I didn't get into that, but it's always good for. Okay, nervous system, we haven't been there yet, but I'm gonna scratch out 9 for sure. Now, for instance, draw. I'm not gonna make you draw, but I might have you label parts of the brain. So yes for parts of the brain, but no for drawing. The cortex and hippocampus and amygdala, I'm not sure I'm gonna have time to really get into those, so I just scratched them out. 15, I scratched out. 20, 21, 22, we're not gonna have time to go into the eye and ear, which is typically what we do, but we're gonna concentrate on the brain as the main nervous system organ and do a brief one of that. Endocrine system, except for number 9, we don't need to get into the detail of 9 and 10. Immune and lymphatic. I scratched out 7. Identify the nature of autoimmune diseases. You should know what an autoimmune disease is doing, but I'm not going to ask you for examples. And I don't want you to have to list 14 symptoms of HIV and AIDS, but you should just, for your own common sense, know a few. But I'm focusing more on testing. The reproductive system, I'm not gonna get into the meiosis part in number 2, so I scratched it off. I didn't mean to scratch off 5, so it's a yes. 6, it's around 40 or whatever, but I'm not gonna ask you that. Average sperm count, I don't think I'm gonna really get into that much at 8. Number 9, I just want to kind of answer that. Endocrine disruptors, sperm counts are getting lower today. And one of the things are endocrine disruptors, which means they're chemicals in the environment which mimic the target hormones effects. And we see more men developing breast tissue. We see more men having lower sperm counts. We also know there's a possibility of other chemicals and radiation in the environment, which could also be causing it. But the common plastic, there's a chemical that's often in the plastics industry. That is one of the main endocrine disruptors. And you know, you might want to check as to whether the water bottles you drink out of are BPA free and so forth, because they have been associated with increased estrogen. So, you know, and particularly increased estrogen in men is not necessarily a good thing. 14, I'm not going to get real specific there with 14. 21, I just wrote in androgens. And 22, discuss whether or not each sex has some other sex hormones, and if so, where they are made. The testes of the male can, okay, let's put it this way. The testes of the male, the interstitial cells between where the seminiferous tubules make the sperm, they convert. There's all these chemical reactions going on, these conversions. And there's a conversion back and forth between an estrogen type molecule and a testosterone. Androgen is the main grouping of hormones for male hormones, but testosterone is one of the main ones we're most familiar with. And estrogens, so there's the ability in the testes to produce, go back and forth between the female and male hormones. In the female, in the adrenal cortex, which is the outer part of the adrenal glands, the opposite part I was talking about in lab today. But the adrenal cortex part of the female also can make androgens. So no matter what sex we are, we do make some of the other. Sort of why, I guess, the word androgynous, having the female, just secondary sex characteristics or whatever, androgen, male, but number 23, the upper third of the oviduct or fallopian tube is where fertilization normally takes place. Ectopic pregnancy, that's where the fertilized egg does not go down to the uterus. It actually sticks in the oviduct, and that's a life-threatening condition. It's very, very life-threatening. It requires immediate surgery. So 30 I scratched out, 31 I scratched out, 32 I scratched out, 33 I scratched out, and so did 35. The forms of birth control are there, so feel free to look it up, but we're not going to have much time to go through that. So is that the whole thing, or did I miss something? finished excretory, let me see. I thought I wanted to tell you about excretory. There it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, and finishing with excretory. What are the million or so filtering units of a kidney called? Nephrons. And the nephrons, if we go through the four functions of a nephron are filtration, reabsorption. In other words, what is filtered out at the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule, a lot of which was filtered out gets reabsorbed back into the body's blood because it's needed. And then in another part, there's stuff that's secreted from the blood of the body back into the kidney tubules. And then excretion is the final one. We call it the excretory system, excreting the liquid waste of the body, and of course urine is the excretory product. Now, if you go down here, okay, I mentioned to you glomerulus is the conglomeration of capillaries that fits into this cup called the Bowman's capsule. And it's the Bowman's capsule that is the filtering unit in each nephron. Now, it's sort of like putting something through a filter. So the blood is coming in, and what goes through into the tubule is the filtrate. And the filtrate composition after this usually has water, salts, bicarbonate, it has hydrogen atoms, urea, which forms urine, glucose. Usually you actually have some blood, you have some sugar initially coming out, you have some amino acids, some drugs, and so forth. Okay, so there's a reabsorption of different water, bicarbonate, sodium chloride, some of those. However, you also have some drugs and lower pH hydrogen atoms, maybe going back in the tubule. So this is the proximal tubule, right? It's most proximate to the Bowman's capsule, the filtering unit. So this is the proximal tubule. And this is the cortex out here, and this is the medulla. We see that with the adrenal gland, we see that with the kidney, we somewhat see that with the brain as well, the use of those words. Then you have what is called, this loopy-doopy thing. It's called the loop of Henle. Probably the person's name who discovered it was Henle. Okay, so the loop of Henle, and then we have sodium chloride coming, being reabsorbed back into the blood, so we don't lose so much sodium chloride. And then there's another, so we've got a level part up here, a level point up here, we've got a loop. The distal tubule, which is furthest away from this, there's some other stuff that happens. And you actually have some secretion and other things. And then finally, there's a collecting duct. So what you have is the parts of a nephron would be the glomerulus in the Bowman's capsule, the proximal tubule, the loop of Henle, the distal tubule, and the collecting duct. And the collecting duct then goes to the renal pelvis, which is the up there with that light tan area in the center of where the kidney comes together. And then it comes down to ureter. The ureter being the tube that takes the urine from the kidney to the bladder. And then the tube that goes from the kidney, there's the bladder sitting here, to the outside is urethra. And of course, in men, the urethra goes through the penis. So the penis really shares two systems. It shares the urinary, the excretory system, and it shares the reproductive system. Women have a shorter urethra. That's short. When we get to the reproductive system, it becomes obvious because of position why UTIs, urinary tract infections, are more common in women than men. Because of the position of the urethral opening, closeness to, I mean, not super close, but within the area, close enough to the penis, where fecal matter comes out, it's got bacteria in it, all this sort of stuff, and proper cleaning does not take place. It's easy, particularly for some of those flagellated bacteria that help flagellus to swim, to actually swim into the urethral opening and then up. And that's why they say whenever you pass a water fountain, this was one of the rules for teachers when I was in teacher's training a long time ago. Never pass a water fountain without drinking. Okay, because you're on your feet and you're teaching all day, and you need to keep hydrating yourself. But then again, you also have to find time to go to the restroom in order to empty your bladders. And if you don't, if you hold it all day long, then you're not flushing out the bacteria that might be climbing up into the urethral opening. So if you're holding it all day long, then you're putting yourself at full risk of getting a UTI. I'm not saying men can't get them. I'm just saying it's more common in females because of position. Okay, the ultimate, if you have kidney failure, then you have to go to a dialysis center and 2 to 3 times a week, probably get hooked up for, I don't know, 3 to 6 hours at a time. And instead of having your kidneys working, you actually have your blood cleaned by a machine. Because ultimately, if that doesn't work, right now there isn't much chance of it. You have to be able to have your blood cleaned. So, and kidney stones, so people, how many people know someone who had a kidney stone? Been there too.
Had one.
Hmm?
Had one.
Yeah, I guess. 3.
My dad's had like 5.
Yeah, some people really get them. They kind of run in families too.
Yes.
Because it's the product that you calcium oxalate for 1:1. There's even a commercial now on the radio concerning a new drug that's out to try to diminish calcium oxalate metabolism. Yes.
So I know that like a lot of kidney stones has to do with how your diet is, but can it also just your body produces too much calcium?
Yeah, and it's not so much the calcium, it's calcium combined with oxalate, or some people have calcium carbonate stones. It's probably, I was told the first time I had it, fish it out of the toilet, take it in, have it analyzed, so that you know what you're dealing with, because there are different diets that you can be on, or let's say foods to avoid. But still your metabolism is still positive.
Yeah, because I know someone that gets them, like, she's had them for years, can't get rid of them, and everyone was telling her, change your diet, and she said that it doesn't have anything to do with her diet. Her body just
It's
produces.
produces it, and that's a possibility, yes. It's, I don't know, sometimes there are pharmaceutical drugs that can help to counteract it, but the third one I had to have lithotripsy, which means it was, I think it was 8 millimeters at the top of your ear, and they didn't think it was going to go through it. So it used to, it's where they have you so that sound waves go through you and break up the stone into smaller pieces. And then the pieces pass, and hopefully not too sharply. Yeah, it depends on how sharp the edges are
Have
too.
you ever heard of the ureterscope or whatever that thing is?
Oh, yes.
Where they have to actually send like a probe.
Right. And men really love that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's,
And then when the hospital's constantly billing you just for breathing inside their facilities afterwards.
yeah, because it can, and you can have scopes of the bladder, you can have scopes, they're different ways to go about it. And then, of course, is urinary incontinence that sometimes does happen too. And the person doesn't have to be real old, it's just sometimes the sphincters get not so tight anymore. All right, let's go to how a muscle contracts. I'm going to kind of ask questions and then give you the answers. Okay, this is more micro muscle stuff. And like this is the biceps muscle, but in order for it to work, muscles contract, they shorten. And when this muscle here shortens, it attaches down here, so it pulls the forearm up. And this is a flexing, when you reduce an angle between bones. When you increase an angle between bones, it's extended. Now, in order to contract, the model for how muscle contraction works is called the sliding filament model. And if you were to take the bands of muscle, which would be called myofibrils, myo always means muscle, fibers, myo muscle, fibrils. The myofibrils of a muscle consist of thick bands and thin bands. And the thick bands are called myosin, and the thin bands are called actin, and they're proteins. Muscle is made of protein. I mean, we eat muscle tissues of animals, right? So what happens here, first of all, what is the unit of contraction? That's the question. What is the name for the unit of contraction on the microscopic level of the muscle? It's called a sarcomer. Sarcomer. And it's a unit between two Z lines, or this. And you have thick myofibrils called myosin, and then you have thin ones. And the myosin ones have hooks. What happens when the sarcomere contracts, this is the relaxed muscle, is it gets shorter from here to here. Remember, see this is longer? It actually pulls these two myosin and actin crosses. I mean, the myosin grabs actin, basically, is what happens. It pulls it in to shorten the muscle. If, I'm making this a very short version, it's much more complex. As long as there's calcium ions there, and as long as there's some other substances, which I'm not going to require you that you know, but they're called troponin and tropomyosin. But I'd like for you to know that muscle contraction, the unit is a sarcomere. Calcium is the mineral that's required for muscle contraction. And that the myosin actually pulls, slides over the actin, and shortens the muscle. So let's see. Myosin are thick. This is the way I first remember this. Actin is thin. listen to the last part of the word, actin. Thin. Actin is thick. Then myosin must be thick. There are cross bridges, and so the heads of the myosin filaments walk along the actin filaments, pulling them toward the center to sharpen their calcium is needed for muscle contraction as well as for healthy bones and teeth, but ATP is also required. So, exercise. You're moving those skeletal muscles. Exercise, you are requiring ATPs. And ATPs are there as a result of cellular respiration. Okay, your mitochondria all come together. Okay, so muscle contraction. Let's go immune system. And we have a good outline for this too. But this is a condensed short version. Just looking for illustrations that kind of put it all together. Not pretty clear or not from anyone? Doesn't need any bigger. Good. Okay. What we're going to say here is that this is the immune system / lymphatic system. They're not the same, but you can't talk about one without the other. They work together to protect the body against pathogens, against cancer cells, against anything that would harm the body. So the immune system, we're talking about immunity, being able to attack pathogens, things that cause disease, rid them in our bodies of it. And the lymphatic system is a series of vessels and lymph nodes that sort of parallel somewhat the circulatory system. Yes. The most solid organisms but if you get changes in that business and the immune system is badly, you can't help it. Yeah, oh, I'm sure. In those types of diseases, your lymph nodes do swell. If your lymph nodes will also swell if you have infection. In many areas around the place, because you get a whole huge cell in the back, in the groin area, you'll see pictures of mono-rest. Things infected with it's like that. It can affect sperm. Yes, it can. Yes. You're right, because remember, the turkey is right here. And if something swells and presses into the trachea, you have to about breathing. I mean, that's an emergency when you can't breathe. And there are all kinds of situations that happen. Okay, so let's back up to this. I'm going to try to give you a guide for this. On the left, if I ask you a question, what are the two types of immunity?
what are the two types of immunity? Immunogenic and adaptive. Now, innate is inborn. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like everybody is kind of
program to just do this. This is not super specific. This is more general. And it's pretty much in all animals. However, the adaptive immunity is in vertebrates only. So vertebrates are having a more sophisticated secondary type of level of approach. Yes.
Is that like the memory cells and like the antibodies and stuff?
Right, exactly. And B cells and T cells and yes, memory cells. That is true. Innate immunity is a recognition of traits shared by a broad range of pathogens, and even causes disease, using a small set of receptors. So they're like cell towers and things. You've got like these little receptor towers throughout your whole body. And if they sense a new wavelength of pathogen, I'm being kind of, that's kind of the way I just want to explain it. Then they, in receiving this signal, there's a certain set of steps that occur, sort of like calling out the military is what we're about to do. And whether or not we can stay in the innate immunity and overcome it is a question. And it may have to go to the adaptive immunity, which these would be maybe the most specialized forces. Okay, so with innate immunity, it's usually a pretty rapid response. I mean, it starts right away. The adaptive immunity, recognition of traits specific to a particular pathogen, like a particular virus or a particular bacteria, using a vast array of receptors. And you have a slower response, but it could be a very strong response. Okay, now let's go from the top across to the right side. And so we're saying pathogens such as bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Okay, so if these are encountered, I'm going to ask you a question on the test possibly that will say, what is the first line of defense for the body? And is it innate or is it acquired?
Innate.
It's innate. And that would include the unbroken skin and outer barrier to the body, the mucous membranes, the layer of skin. When you go into surgery for any reason, you are violating the first barrier of defense. And that's why it has to be a sterile room. Everything has to be sterile. Because you are opening up the body and saying, okay, come on, whatever pathogens are there, have a feast. Because you are gaining portal to whatever it is. Okay, so skin, mucous membranes, and also secretions like tears. Tears actually have some anti-pathogenic effects, and that's why we used to laugh about crying really is very healthy for you because the lysozymes and the tears are, can kill bacteria. There is some truth in that, but also a release of emotions helps too. Okay, so the first line of defense are the barrier defenses, the skin, the mucous membranes, secretions. So what's the second line of defense that's also innate? Internal defenses. And they include, and we've heard of phagocytosis before, like a white blood cell surrounds a bacteria and engulfs it and takes it in, forms a vacuole around it. Lysozyme squeezes digestive enzymes into it, breaks it down into pieces. Okay, so phagocytosis, which is engulfing of food. There are also NK cells called natural killer cells. So these are different divisions of the immune military, but they're still non-specific, they're still innate. And there are antimicrobial proteins. There's a complement that's released of substances which can actually mark a pathogen for destruction, which is pretty cool. That doesn't sound right, but in terms of trying to kill your pathogen. And inflammatory response is your body's trying to prevent you and wall up, like if you have a splinter, to wall up the area and bring blood to it and bring the cells to it to help prevent you from getting infection. Okay, so let's talk adaptive immunity. I think it's Angela, you did this one. This is a very complicated chapter. You can take courses in immunology. So this is a very quick, brief overview. What are the two types of adaptive immunity? Humoral. Humors refer to fluids in the body, and the fluids refer to our blood. Okay, so this is a blood response or cell-mediated response. So you have the humoral response, which ends up responding with antibodies that defend against infection in body fluids. Antibodies are specific to the particular foreign protein called an antigen. Okay, so you have an antigen-antibody response. Cell-mediated response are cytotoxic, which is going to get killed too. Cytotoxic cells defend against infection in body cells. Okay, as an overview, I went over here and I said, humoral bloodborne involve lymphocytes. Let's say that word, I forgot to put it. Lymphocytes. When we talked about white blood cells, we said some of the white blood cells are lymphocytes. They come from the lymphatic system. And there are two types of lymphocytes. What are they? Blank cells and blank cells.
Monocyte.
Oh, well, okay, I'm not, those are just regular white blood cells. Okay, I'm talking about the lymphocytes. B and T, right. B and T, B cells and T cells. All right, now, B cells are going to produce cells called plasma cells in the blood, which are going to produce antibodies. And this cell-mediated response is going to be a cellular response, and cellular responses involve T cells. And you've heard of T cells because of HIV, which causes human immunodeficiency syndrome, which causes AIDS. Okay, people with AIDS have a low T cell count, much lower than what they should be. Now, there are two types of T cells. We're really only going to talk about one type of B cell. Okay, so that out too. The two types of T cells are helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. And really, if you put this all together, what you're going to find is that the helper T cells are sort of like the main organizers of the adaptive response. And in HIV, it's the helper T cell counts that are low because of the viral load of HIV. They have a high viral load of HIV in the blood, which brings down the helper T cell counts and leaves them defenseless against things that most people would not become diseased with, because it is it's an immune system attack. The helper T cells are like the co-op arsenal. They'll activate the B cells to produce the antibodies, and they'll activate the T cells to destroy and become killer cells. Now, I know our time is on the back of this. I just want to point out a few things here. This is a chart that kind of shows you the role of the helper T cell right here. And also, let's add the memory cells, which were mentioned before. We're also going to have some memory cells in this adaptive immune system, which means we've been here before, so we're going to keep an arsenal ready in case they come back again. So there are memory cells as well as these others. And what does an antibody look like? That's on the next page. 2 heavy chains, 2 light chains. This is the inflammatory response. And this is more the lymphatic system. So continue studying that. We'll pick up on Friday. No quiz on Friday because we need to talk. Thank you. Have a great day.
I'm gonna take a